If you have a child who goes to school, right now, go get the highest value life insurance policy that you can. If we all insure our kids, insurance companies will have no choice but to lobby with us. Talk to your kids about disregarding fire alarms. Lots of times, active attackers will pull the fire alarms to draw people outside of the classroom. I do understand that this poses another safety risk, but dying in a fire at school has much less probability than dying from a gun at school. Send emails, write letters, go to school board meetings, pushing for a single point of entry into every single school that is not attached to the main office. Something like this that is outside and away from the school that requires clearance for entry. If you or someone you know has been personally affected by school-based terror, first of all, I am so sorry. Secondly, sue the district. Whether you were in the school or in the area where a mass shooting has occurred, you are entitled to compensation. You endured pain and suffering, you most likely endured PTSD, and school districts are owned by the state. Money is all that matters to them.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining me here for Conversations with Taz on Talk About It Tuesday. Please excuse my stuffiness. Allergies are kicking my butt today, but I'm going to do my best to get through this. And because the United States has turned into a ghetto-ass dumpster, well, it's always been ghetto, dumpster fire, this too may be a long one because there's a lot to bring you. Unfortunately, I do have to bring you the news that yet again today, there was another shooting. This time outside of a Washington, D.C. funeral home. Let's take a look, and I'll come back with the latest of the information that I could find.
Fox News Alert now. We are just starting to get some live images out of Washington, D.C. Through our affiliate there, WTTG, that several people have been shot. We are being told outside of a funeral home there in Washington. That is where our camera is set up there. That is the Stewart Funeral Home. It's in Northeast Washington. Reportedly, the shooting broke out at 12:30 p.m. locally. Not immediately clear how many people have been shot. No word of any fatalities at this time. Just that several people have been reported shot outside that funeral home in Washington, D.C. Just over an hour ago.
This in from NBCWashington.com. 1 killed, 3 hurt in shooting at D.C. funeral home. Police. 1 man died and 3 other people were hurt in a shooting Tuesday at a funeral home in Northeast D.C., police say. A funeral for a homicide victim had just ended at the Stewart Funeral Home at the 4400 block of Benning Road, Northeast, about noon when someone shot people who were standing outside, Metropolitan Police Department Chief Robert Conti said at a news conference. Conti said an officer who was nearby heard the gunshots and found 4 adults were shot. 1 man died. The 3 other victims suffered injuries that were not life-threatening, the police chief said. Several people who were standing on the block after the funeral were apparently targeted, but police don't yet know why, Conti said. Police haven't identified a suspect and investigators are still working on talking to witnesses, Conti said. I'm telling you all, this is becoming worse than the Wild Wild West. Now, I want to update you with additional information that has come in regarding the shooting that occurred at a bank in Louisville yesterday. And I'm being specific about that because, as I told you last night, there was a second shooting, and I will do my best to update you on that as well. Sit back and take in as much of this information as you can.
A 5th victim has passed away in the hospital. Deanna Eckert, 57.
I wanted to give you guys the latest update on Louisville. First, a 5th person has passed away. The shooter, who I refuse to name, was a 25-year-old University of Alabama graduate. He had a long rifle version of an AR-15 and basically in a conference room killed a lot of people, including the bank's vice president. And he did all this while live streaming it on Instagram. Apparently, he also had left a bunch of threatening messages on Instagram as well. And as I mentioned in an earlier video, 2 of the people who were killed, including the bank's vice president, were close friends with Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky. But hey, thoughts and prayers to the victims, right?
This is awful. I have a very close friend that didn't make it today. And I have another close friend who didn't either, and one who's at the hospital that I hope is going to make it through. So when we talk about praying, I hope people will. For those that we are hoping can make it through the surgeries that they're going through, and then we've got to do what we have done these last 3 years after everything. We've got to wrap our arms around these families. And to everybody who needs it, don't be afraid to get some help. And I want to thank them and all our other law enforcement officers for responding and doing their best to try to save some of my friends and many others.
Well, there was another mass shooting today in Louisville, Kentucky. 5 people were killed, including the shooter. And I'm always paying attention. Why was this picture used? This is the picture that's being cycled across all media outlets. Why?
This is the evening update for today's live-streamed mass shooting in Louisville, Kentucky. 23-year-old Connor Sturgeon was an employee of the bank and was notified he was going to be fired. Officers arrived on scene within 3 minutes of the initial 911 call and found that the suspect was armed and shooting with a rifle. Police engaged the suspect, who was pronounced deceased a short time later. Sturgeon also live-streamed the shooting on Instagram. Meta, the parent company of Instagram, said it was in contact with law enforcement and states it quickly worked to get the footage taken down. Police say they've never had any prior engagement with the suspect. The 4 victims were identified as the following: 63-year-old Tommy Elliott, 64-year-old Jim Tutt, 40-year-old Josh Barrick, 57-year-old Juliana Farmer. 9 additional people were transported to the hospital. 3 of them have been discharged. 3 others are in critical condition, including a recently graduated police officer who was shot in the head and had to have brain surgery. And of course, no mass casualty incident is complete without politics. Many local Kentucky politicians, all the way up to the president, have released statements today, many calling for more gun control laws to be put in place. The Family Assistance Center that was open near the shooting today remains open with assistance of the Red Cross. Louisville Mayor Craig Greenberg, who is also a survivor of a workplace shooting, has been in the public a lot today and has continued to ask for prayers for all those involved.
It don't make no motherfucking sense.
Now, as news outlets are showing a lot of sympathy and compassion for how they're portraying this mass murderer, it's ridiculous and it's sickening. But let me give you some information that was released today. On April 4th, he purchased the AR that he utilized. He had told a friend and his followers on Instagram that he was suicidal. He kind of framed it as if this was a protest. And this is in addition to the information that I gave you last night. So if you did not see that, please go back and see that as well. It was said that he was, like I said, in a protest. Now, Representative Morgan McGarvey, a Democrat out of Kentucky, during a press conference today, was questioning the book and pronoun banning in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, while politicians were inexplicably making the Commonwealth a gun sanctuary. Because shortly after the initial shooting at the bank yesterday, our top representatives here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky asked for thoughts and prayers and then continue to vote against gun legislation. But also, as of yesterday, there were 3 emergency operations. The young 26-year-old officer that was shot in the head is still in the ICU in critical condition and is being treated by the trauma team. But, well, he's dead. There was no mugshot. That's why. But there's like an homage of pictures as if we're writing his resume and getting him ready for a Tinder date. It's ridiculous. But like I said, there was a second shooting in Louisville yesterday, and here's the information we have thus far.
So the answer to your question is yes, there actually was a second shooting in Louisville this morning, just a few hours after the one at the bank. This happened at a local community college, and 1 person was killed and another person was injured. While police say that there is no current active threat, the shooter or shooters got away, and police are scouring the area trying to find them.
Yeah. And like I said, this is what the top Kentucky reps from the GOP have been up to.
Immediately after the shooting in Louisville, Kentucky, Republican Senators Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell both simultaneously sent out their thoughts and prayers while simultaneously blocking all pieces of gun legislation every single time a bill hits their desk. So guys, I want you to tell Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell to take their thoughts and prayers and shove them.
And what's even more despicable are the conservatives that, whether in real life, online, or offline, are saying the most despicable things, and just trying to distance themselves and their movement, a movement of individualism, away from these incidents. So let's just remind them, since they have short-term memory loss.
Wow, are we just going to forget about all of these?
For some reason, folks on the right have extremely short memories when it comes to acts of right-wing political violence. Jim David Atkinson, author of a manifesto urging violent war against liberals, opens fire inside a Knoxville, Tennessee Unitarian church. Keith Luke of Brockton, Massachusetts, who is a neo-Nazi, kills two and injures another in a rape and murder spree targeting non-white people. Danny Roy Baker, Miramar Beach, Florida, who is a former GOP volunteer angry about immigration, opens fire on a room full of Chilean exchange students. Richard Poplawski of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a white supremacist fearful of a plot by President Obama to take his guns, kills 3 police officers and leaves 2 others injured in a standoff at his home. James von Brunn of Washington, D.C., a neo-Nazi, walks into the U.S. Holocaust Museum and opens fire, killing a black guard. Ross William Muehlberger of Wichita Falls, Texas, yells "White Power" as he shoots up a cafe.
All I'm going to say is, as always, make sure you check out the links in the description of this video. Now, we are fed up. And this next video, I believe, speaks for everyone with a conscience, a heart, and a willingness to end this senseless violence.
They're dead. Children. They're dead. Senator Marsha Blackburn, her comment after the massacre, my office is in contact with federal, state, and local officials, and we stand ready to assist. In what? They're dead. What are you going to assist with? Cleaning up their brains off the wall? Wiping the blood off the schoolroom floor? What are you going to assist with? Bill Lee, I'm closely monitoring the tragic situation. Please join us in prayer. What are you monitoring? They're dead. Amendment, the freedom. You know, it's a myth. It's a joke. It's just a game they play. Is it freedom for kids to go to school and try to socialize and try to learn and be scared to death that they might die that day? But Ted Cruz will fix them because he's going to double the number of cops in the schools. That's what he wants to do. Well, that'll create a great environment. Is that freedom? Or is it freedom to have a congressman who can make a postcard with all his family holding rifles, including an AR-15 or whatever? Is that cool? Is that like street cred for a Republican? Vote for some good gun safety laws that most of the public agrees to. Would you do that if it saved one kid? Or is your job and your money so important to you that you would say, screw the kid?
Couldn't have said it better myself. Could not have said it better myself. Now, last night we did, I gave you a quick synopsis of what's going on with the whole abortion pill debacle and the junk science that's being used. Some people were still confused, so I found this clip that really truly simplifies it. And then we'll take a break from the heavy stuff, get into some royal news, and then we'll get back into the news of the night.
Here in the state of Washington, here in the state of Texas, I am ruling that the abortion pill mifepristone is safe. Unsafe. But we ruled it safe and effective several times over 20 years. Yeah, I agree with you. It's one of 2 pills used in combination in more than half of legal abortions in the US. I've ruled that the studies on the pill do not support the FDA's conclusion. He's just saying that because he's anti-abortion. My ruling is paused for 1 week while y'all figure out what you're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. We've appealed the decision in Texas and we're asking the appeals court to make a decision by Thursday at noon. And we will not stop prescribing mifepristone until we've received directions from the FDA. And just a reminder that people have used the pill for 20 years.
So those of y'all that unequivocally think abortion bad, it's not health care. Yeah, Duggar family, I'm looking at you. Now, as promised, we're going to ease things up for a little bit, and then we're going to get back to the news because it's pretty heavy. So let's go across the pond because I got to poke fun at the Queen Consort and King Chucky as they continue to stir the pot leading up to the coronation next month. Let's go.
Oh, really now? So according to Richard Eden, which, take it with a grain of salt, the Marquess of Cholmondeley is going to have a new position within King Charles's court. Allegedly, Charles has appointed him to the position of Lord-in-Waiting, quote, a prestigious position that will see him attend important state and royal occasions, as well as being called upon to represent His Majesty at various events. Quote, the appointment is likely to please the Prince and Princess of Wales, who are friends and Norfolk neighbors of the Cholmondeleys. So the communication side of me says it makes a lot of sense to leak this information to Richard Eden, who writes favorably about the British royal family. It makes a lot of sense to not have a statement come directly from the palace on this. The information still gets out there, but it shows it's not that big of a deal. People in aristocratic circles get appointed to different positions all the time. It's also an attempt to quiet all the speculation that David Rock Savage was removed from his position because of the alleged rift, which a simple Google search will show you isn't true. But people have been speculating nonetheless. But my petty side says this is all Camilla's doing to make Kate miserable. Because despite what Petronella Wyatt says, Camilla is definitely capable of scheming. So we will be seeing a lot more of the Cholmondeleys at royal events. At least David, but I would be surprised if we did not see Rose with him.
Now keep in mind, David and Rose married when Rose was 19 and already pregnant, and he was in his 40s. And Rose allegedly is Willie Wheel's mistress. But baby, there's more tea than that.
How Queen Elizabeth reacted to Charles having an affair. When news of Prince Charles' affair with Camilla became public, the Queen was very upset as she did not condone adultery. Royal biographer Tom Bower wrote in his book that the Queen was so angered by the affair that she called Camilla wicked after several martinis. Bower also claimed that the Queen banned Camilla from the palace for some time, as the man she cheated on with Charles was the Queen Mother's godson, Andrew Parker Bowles. When Diana sought advice from the Queen about her marriage troubles with Charles, the Queen simply told her that she didn't know what to do and that Charles was hopeless.
So why is it a big deal that Kate wore this color to Easter service yesterday? It's because this blue has been Camilla's sort of calling card since she became the Queen Consort. This is her first Easter as the Queen Consort. This was her first Commonwealth Day as the Queen Consort. This is the outfit they chose for their official coronation portrait. This was her first state banquet as the Queen. She wore this to one of their first state receptions as Queen in late 2022. They also released this video for World Poetry Day, where she sat down and talked about how important reading is to her grandchildren. And this isn't even getting into all the other various shades of blue that she has worn since she became Queen. Should we do a rapid fire? Yeah, let's do a rapid fire. Let's look at all the blue outfits that she has worn since she became Queen. Wearing blue for the Christmas Day walk at Sandringham. This is their first state visit in Germany. She wore this deeper navy blue when she handed out an award that was named in honoring Queen Elizabeth II at the Royal Ascot. Another darker navy for International Women's Day. And she does many events in navy blue. Oh wait, sorry, I think I was done too soon. because she wears blue at many, many, many events. And just to throw a little bit of spice into this Royal Navy blue, here she is when they arrived in Germany in a very nice shade of light blue. So yeah, I'm going to stand by my statement and say that I definitely think Kate knew what she was doing. Is it her favorite color? Who knows? It kind of seems that way. And when she wears the color at a lot of firsts for the Queen Consort and for King Charles, it's important to her. And you would think that Kate knows that. I made a video this morning saying that I thought Kate knew exactly what she was doing when she decided to wear this colored dress to Easter yesterday. Because you're going to see lots of comments like this, even though they were saying this literally a few years ago. And they only decided to change their tune when Meghan called them out.
Y'all, we have got to talk about a really, really terrible article from The Telegraph. Recall, Charles recently signaled support after The Guardian, The Cost of the Crown series came out showing the monarchy's ties to slavery, that he supported digging into the monarchy's ties further, which again doesn't actually mean anything, but anyway. We are already getting an idea of what the conservative pushback is going to be. Capitalism, not slavery, made Britain rich. It's time we stop apologizing for our past. I'm not an economist, but what does Daniel think capitalism is? Also using Viola Davis in The Woman King. As your picture was an interesting choice. But anyway. But I love me some revisionist history. The UK did play its part in the Atlantic slave trade, but so did many other kingdoms. They were doing it too, Dad. Where we are unique is in our roll towards ending it. Yep, you take all the credit for that. Y'all, he kicks it off on a high note, which is Black people enslaved other Black people too. Gotta kick it off with a non sequitur. Quote, slavery was enforced by the coercive power of the state, right up to the moment when it was snuffed out under British pressure. You know, those good colonizers just trying to, stand up for the Black people. Yeah. You are not ready for the reason that Britain is different in this case. He tells a story of a British man being offered a young Yoruba girl as a gift. And what did he do with that gift? He gave her an English name. Queen Victoria became her godmother, paid for education, and arranged for her to marry a Yoruba businessman. Quote, are the British really the baddies here? Yeah, you still are. Y'all, I don't think I can go on. Here's another quote. Does Britain strike you as a country where we refuse to discuss slavery? I can't even say it with a straight face. You're okay discussing it when it fits the narrative you want to tell, and that's the white savior one. The one where white British people just woke up one day and said, you know what? I think owning human beings is wrong. So you know what? We are going to free them and we are going to pay them reparations for what we've done to them. Oh, psych. Actually, we're going to pay the people who owned them because they lost property. And we've done so up until 2015. He finishes up with the idea that capitalism made human bondage redundant. Okay, sir. Now it's early in the week to call this, but this might be the most bananas thing I read all week.
All I have to say is British Museum, give everybody their shit back. And I love seeing the Queen Concubine and Wadey Katie fight. The girls are tussling. I love this for them. I really, really love this for them. Now, a bit ago, I did report on an actor, most notably for a role in John Wick, because John Wick 4 was coming out, passing away. Unfortunately, this has evolved into a controversy over his autopsy, and it's far weirder than you think. Take a look.
So TMZ is reporting Lance Riddick's death certificate has come in, and shockingly, you're not going to believe the twists and turns that have been going on since the untimely demise of this man's death. And that has everything to do with his wife denying the death certificate, including his attorney as well, and the mysterious death of his first wife, and how he met this one. Let's get into this story. So TMZ is reporting that his death certificate is in, and it shows that he had died of heart disease as well as coronary artery disease. Now, when that death certificate was released, his wife and his attorney came out swinging. His attorney first put out a statement and said that Lance was the most physically fit person that he had ever known, and that Lance took incredibly good care of his health, including a strict diet and using his gym facilities in his home. His wife stated, according to the attorney, and I quote, "The information appearing on his death certificate is wholly inconsistent with his lifestyle." They go on to say that the death certificate information is not corroborated and is inconsistent with the facts that is known to his family. And you're probably wondering, why is his wife contradicting what the medical examiner has stated on how her husband passed away? The question is, we don't know. What we do know is, according to TMZ, she says she never asked for an autopsy. Now, why would you not want an autopsy on your relatively healthy husband? Wouldn't you want to know how he passed away? So when I saw that post, I immediately went to the comment section on Baller Alert's page, and the first thing someone said was, "Yep, you know his poisoned him. Be careful with them." And you can see the emojis that were used. Now, mind you, I didn't know that his wife was, and I don't think her race has anything to do with it, but I do think the untimely circumstances of how he met this woman and how his first wife passed away are incredibly unusual. Now, who is his wife? Her name is Stephanie Riddick, and there's not much to know about her, what she does, and how she makes her money. What we do know is that they had an incredibly quiet wedding ceremony around June of 2011. Now, keep that date in mind, because we're going to show you a timeline of how her rapidly getting married to this man is suspiciously unusual. So after I found out when he married his second wife, I was wondering, when did he leave his first wife? Now, according to this page here, who had a little discography on his first wife, who goes by the name of Susan, she was married to Lance from 1986 to 2011. Now, it doesn't say the date that she actually divorced him, but it says that that's when they were together. And his first wife was an incredibly successful jewelry maker with a net worth of about $1 million. So she was in her bag. She had a heart attack a couple of weeks prior to her death, and then just had complications around it, and then died in 2011. Now that's crazy, because didn't he get married to his second wife in 2011? I don't know, but it all seems suspicious. You would think that she would want to know how her husband died, but then you find out that his first wife died of roughly the same thing. Weird.
Now, there was a woman, I don't know if y'all remember this story, who was crushing on this guy, killed the wife, ended up marrying the husband because of new technology, and everybody wants to do a 23andMe and Ancestry.com and all that stuff. And if you don't know that how these companies are making extra money on the side, Google is free, baby. And it was found out that she killed the first wife to get the husband. I'm not saying that that's what this woman did. I am not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's looking real familiar. It's looking real familiar. And I started going down the rabbit hole, and I had to stop myself because I'm like, this is getting stranger and stranger and stranger. And yeah. Now for this next one, it's 2 videos. I'm putting the trigger warning up because it's ACAB.
Fucking one, I'm telling you right now, fucking 5 years ago with this shit, he would have been on the fucking ground. Absolutely. 10, 15, 20 years ago, that motherfucker would be dead. He'd be fucking his teeth if he missed. Fucking.
Before midnight Friday, Darian Barrett and Scott Jacobs were recording a DPS trooper conducting a traffic stop. A few minutes in, a black car drives into the middle of the intersection, laying on the horn. Then multiple people jump out and run.
Hey, we got an accident or a road rage over here, officer. Step in, what the f***? You're an officer, go over there and do something, this is petty.
Darian and Scott do walk over.
There's a gunshot in this window and there's a child right here.
And seconds later, the men and another nearby witness realize a little boy has been shot in the back seat.
There's a kid in there!
2.5 minutes after that car pulled into the intersection, Darian runs back over to the trooper.
Officer, we have a kid down in the back seat. There's at least 4 shots into the window.
Scott narrated his emotions as he yelled at the trooper, still wrapping up the traffic stop.
There's a kid shot! What the hell is wrong with you, dude?
It was just panic because you wanted to help these children, but it was also chaos because help was right there. Help was 10 seconds away.
4 minutes after the bullet-riddled car stopped, the trooper got on his motorcycle. As he prepared to drive the roughly 100 yards over to the injured 5-year-old, Darian was on the phone with 911.
I had to run to the vehicle because this officer didn't want to do nothing. He's just now approached the vehicle.
Darian and Scott tell me they're still processing what they witnessed. DPS just told me late tonight they are now reviewing this incident. It's unclear, though, what the trooper's duty status is right now. The 2 other children who were shot in that back seat of that car are out of the hospital. As for arrests, Tempe police haven't made any.
It's just shocking to see. You have to be human first.
Right.
Go be a human first.
It's really tough to watch.
Yeah.
So many cops are willing to just stop and harass non-white people for just existing as non-white people. But he felt the traffic stop was more important, and he couldn't just skedaddle over to a wounded child. Imagine how that would have went if those 2 gentlemen were not there recording. Imagine if we still lived in a world where the capability of taking video wasn't so easy. This is what we've had to live with for generations. So keep in mind, things are not just becoming the way that they are. You're just now being able to see it. And it must be nice to just now be seeing it in a new millennium. And just like there's consequences to what those officers did, you know, all the legislation that Ron DeSantis wants to keep pushing forward in Florida, the consequences are coming back, but it's biting everybody else in the ass and not so much him. As he's spinning a narrative all over the place, still pretending as if he's not going to announce his run for the presidency. Residents of Florida are suffering the consequences. And those that are suffering the most are our most vulnerable. Children. Take a look.
Florida's ranked in one of the top 5 human trafficking states in the entire country, with Tampa, Florida being within the top 10. While Ron DeSantis busily passes the Don't Say Gay bills, anti-CRT bills, a man in Florida has now been arrested with the largest child porn collection ever seen by deputies and is facing 1,100 charges. They say that there's going to be a lot more charges, and he will probably get a life sentence. He wasn't a drag queen. He wasn't a trans person. 1,180 counts of child pornography and 4 counts of bestiality images. We can definitely see what Ron DeSantis' priorities are. Not actually take care of the problem, just change people's attention.
They sometimes let their emotions get the best of them, and they don't really think about the consequences of their actions or what could happen as a result of their stupidity. Today, I'm going to talk about one of those cases. This is the information we know right now. Of course, some of it could change as we continue our investigation. This is a road rage incident that occurred a little after 6 p.m. on Saturday, October 8th, on US 1 south of Callahan. NCSO received multiple 911 calls with reports of people being shot. According to a witness, there was a black Dodge Ram pickup truck with 5 occupants and a gray Nissan Murano with 3 occupants involved in a road rage incident. He described it as a cat and mouse game the whole time. He stated that both drivers were driving so erratically, he called 911 because he thought something bad was going to happen. At some point, there was also another pickup truck involved in the road rage, but wasn't involved in the shooting incident. According to our investigation, the driver of a black Dodge Ram, William Joseph Hale, age 35, from Douglas, Georgia, and the driver of a They sometimes let their emotions get the best of them, and they don't really think about the consequences of their actions or what could happen as a result of their stupidity. Today, I'm going to talk about one of those cases. This is the information we know right now. Of course, some of it could change as we continue our investigation. This is a road rage incident that occurred a little after 6 p.m. on Saturday, October 8th, on US 1 south of Callahan. NCSO received multiple 911 calls with reports of people being shot. According to a witness, there was a black Dodge Ram pickup truck with 5 occupants and a gray Nissan Murano with 3 occupants involved in a road rage incident. He described it as a cat and mouse game the whole time. He stated that both drivers were driving so erratically, he called 911 because he thought something bad was going to happen. At some point, there was also another pickup truck involved in the road rage, but wasn't involved in the shooting incident. According to our investigation, the driver of a black Dodge Ram, William Joseph Hale, age 35, from Douglas, Georgia, and the driver of a Gilliard Allison, age 43, from Callahan, Florida, were both involved in a road rage incident traveling northbound on US 1, coming Jacksonville area, speeding, driving erratically, and brake checking each other. That's getting in front of each other and applying the brakes. At some point during the encounter, the driver of the Dodge Ram got up alongside the Nissan and rolled his passenger window down and began shouting at the driver of the Nissan to pull over. The right front passenger of the Nissan put her arm out the passenger window and flicked the other vehicle off with her middle finger. The Nissan driver, Allison, rolled his window down to shout back at the other driver, and a plastic water bottle was thrown from the Dodge Ram into the Nissan. According to the Nissan driver, Allison, the water bottle did not hurt him or cause him to lose control of the vehicle. The driver of the Nissan, Allison, then grabbed his 6 Sauer .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun and fired 1 shot at the Dodge truck before driving away at high rate of speed. Allison stated the reason he fired his weapon was to get out of the whole situation. The bullet that Mr. Allison fired went into the right side rear passenger door of the pickup truck and struck a 5-year-old girl in the right leg. According to the driver of the Dodge Ram, Hale, he heard a loud pow, but he really didn't think nothing of it until everyone started freaking out in the back seat. When he seen the Nissan Murano speed away, he then realized his daughter was shot. As the Nissan was leaving the Dodge Ram, the Ram driver, Hale, sped up to get closer to the Nissan and began firing several shots from his Glock 43 9mm semi-automatic handgun out of the driver window with his left hand back at the Nissan. According to the Dodge driver, Hale, he shot everything that was in the magazine, 7 or 8 rounds. At least 3 bullets struck the Nissan. One of the bullets went through the rear of the vehicle and struck a 14-year-old girl in the back, causing a collapsed lung. As both vehicles were speeding northbound on US 1, they observed an NCSO patrol car at Kimmy Road in US 1 and stopped, and the 2 drivers got out and started arguing and fighting with each other. The deputy had to break up the fight. The deputy then called Nassau County Fire Rescue, who transported both juveniles that had been shot to the hospital. Their injuries turned out to be non-life-threatening. After our investigation, Frank Gilliard Allison and William Joseph Hale were both arrested and charged with attempted murder and booked into the Nassau County Jail. Now, what is scarier than one crazy driver with a gun? Two crazy drivers with a gun. Thankfully, no one was killed in this incident, but it could have been very easily turned out that way because two people were acting stupid and let their tempers get the best of them. There could have been two dead kids because of two stupid grown men. If someone is driving aggressively around you, let them go. Slow down. Go the other direction. Get the vehicle description if you can and call police. Don't show them how stupid they are by doing something stupid yourself. Nobody wins when you engage them, because this is what can happen.
In case you didn't catch it, these two idiots took their road rage out on each other, shot into each other's vehicles, completely missed each other, and shot each other's daughters. See, these crazy performative legislative moves have consequences, but not for the people that are sitting in political office posturing for one another in sound bites. This is why I keep saying, vote on every level. Make your voices heard. Call their offices, email them, at them on social media. Let them know we do not want to be, nor did we sign up to be, the casualties of their shenanigans. This is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. They're rolling back freedoms, and I see no bravery in them. But corruption seems to be a coin with many sides. Let's get updated on the latest Trump news.
So the Trump transcript from the arraignment was released yesterday. I just want to show you one of the little snippets. So apparently Trump wants to get out of appearing for his upcoming hearings regarding this case. So his lawyers try to use the excuse of not only is he a former president, but, it would save New York money, because you have to have all of this protection and police and barricades and yada yada. Well, the judge ain't falling for it. He don't give two shits. In fact, he refers to him as Mr. Trump, although the lawyers keep calling him President Trump, President Trump. My guess is that'll be disputed soon. But anyway, here's the judge's response. I expect all other defendants to appear in court, even high-profile defendants. I think in the interest of transparency and assuring the rules of law even-handedly, at this time I'm going to deny your application.
Now, the day of the arraignment, I told you that he was trying to convince the judge that his next court appearance, which is December 4th of this year, that he shouldn't have to appear in person. Bro, they wouldn't allow you to get arraigned via Zoom. You're going to have to come in. These charges are serious. And they don't trust you, which no one should trust you. But Trump has some extreme sycophant supporters that keep flip-flopping, because just a couple months ago, they were trying to figure out how to distance themselves from Trump. Now they're all rallying around him, just tanking their careers and credibility once again. But there's one particular sycophant that he's going to fangirl for Trump to the grave, it seems. But let's take a look at how he feels about Trump being indicted.
Charlie Kirk, who is a Trump loyalist, of course, was furious that the FBI had raided Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago, and so he tweeted the following. How many of the perverts whose names are written in Jeffrey Epstein's black book have had their homes raided by the FBI since the Ghislaine Maxwell trial concluded? Well, Charlie, I'm glad you asked. So far, before the raid into Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence, none of those people had been raided. After Trump's raid, one of those individuals was raided. As of today, at least one. It was what Brendan Carrot wrote, and he included all these photos of Donald Trump with his buddy, Jeffrey Epstein.
See, I need the GOP and their little fangirls and fanboys to really think before they speak and stop acting like the rest of us don't recall the history that we're currently living through, because it's so crazy. It's so we can't forget it. It is like we have been tossed into the Hunger Games with a little bit of Squid Wars. We don't forget. But this next video comes from a creator out of the UK, but his message reigns supreme globally, most notably within the United States. And I want you to pay attention. And this is why I tell you, be careful of the content that you consume. And even if you have to fact check, and I know some of you do DM me and keep doing it. I don't care. It does not bother me when you have questions about content that you come across, because I do a pretty good job of keeping up with what's real, what's fake, who these people are, and what they're doing. Because some people will do anything for money. Some people will just take all money, and they do not believe in or subscribe to the adage that all money isn't good money. And thank goodness this creator does, but pay close attention, especially if your numbers are starting to climb on social media. You may be propositioned in this way as well.
Please watch this video. Even if you don't like me or my content or agree with my views, this video is for everybody that consumes content online, and it is super important. I have just turned down a life-changing amount of money to make one short TikTok video. Anyone that knows me will know that I don't have a lot of money. It would have changed my life. I could have cleared my debts and then some. I've built my platform searching for the truth. When I stand here and talk to you, I'm giving my honest interpretation of the world. But that's not what I was being asked to do. The video came with a script, and it was a heavy narrative and a controversial one as well. Because of the type of content that I make, several organisations that kind of chime with my political views have been in touch, ranging from charities to political parties to political organisations, offering to work with me or to help me in some way. I've never been paid, not even a penny, to make a TikTok for you. So I was really excited to be paid for my first ever video, and it was such a large sum. They even sent some in advance just to get me to agree to work on the video, but I hit refund straight away. The reason I'm telling you this is politics is a very murky world. There's things that happen that you will never hear anything about. I've got to glimpse at some of those things, and I'm sharing this with you because some creators on some platforms, including here, wouldn't have turned the money down. They would have took the money and they would have given you the narrative. They would have misled you for thousands of pounds. So next time you see a video that's quite clearly a narrative and you have an emotional reaction to it, I want you to ask the question, was this paid for? Was this opinion bought for money? Because now we know the answer could be yes.
And when in doubt, I want you to keep a few things in mind. There are a lot of content creators across every social media platform that do have paid sponsorships. They are able to create these ads, so to speak, online in a way that is cohesive with the rest of their content, because that's why they were asked. Because they have a unique way of getting through to the public. If someone has a certain style and then you see content where it doesn't match that style, they've been given a script. When someone has never talked about politics, then all of a sudden, a controversial topic that they previously avoided becomes a viral video for them out of nowhere, especially when they don't fit into that category that's being affected by this controversial issue. Be wary. Be very, very wary. I've seen a few content creators since about 2017 that I'm like, oh, I like their content. And then around election cycles, things change. I saw it a lot when Roe v. Wade was overturned, where I'm like, this is way different than your regular content. The way you're putting this content out is not how you normally are. What the hell? Somebody is not going to go from giving you the top 10 places to eat in city, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden, abortion is the devil. No. It doesn't work like that. Now, as always, let's talk about one of the kings. Once again, I gave y'all a bunch of information last week, but as information comes out even more regarding Harlan Crow, you know, the GOP sugar daddy, I'm going to give it to you. And once again, this is why they're always screaming George Santos, George Santos, George Santos, because the biggest thing that people on the wrong side of history have is projection. As I've told you before, it's that cloak and dagger, smoke and mirrors. Look over there. Don't pay attention to what I'm doing. So let's see what else Mr. Crow is up to.
Ladies and gentlemen, Harlan Crow hasn't just bought off Clarence Thomas. He's also bought off Joe Fuckface Manchin and Kirsten, I don't know how to dress, Cinema. For all I know, the guy probably financed Kirsten Cinema's ridiculous wardrobe. And I'm sure this happened right before Kirsten Cinema did the whole So let's investigate these motherfuckers too, while we're at it.
I'm sure him investing in her and being her latest sugar daddy happened before her election. Because watch, keep watching, mark my words, so that she's not primaried after the next election cycle, she's finally going to come out as good old Republican. Because once again, every road leading to and from Kirsten Cinema is GOP. Grand old profitability. Now, also, last night, I brought you all a part one regarding the Heritage Foundation. We're going to get into the Heritage Foundation, and then we're going to talk about the Council for National Policy. But there's a bit more about the Heritage Foundation you truly need to know, especially ahead of this next round of elections. Do not be fooled by interviews and narratives and people trying to look holier than thou and as if they're taking the moral high ground for your safety. The past month has shown you, if nothing else has shown you, they don't give a fuck.
The advocacy arm of the Heritage Foundation, the powerful conservative think tank based in Washington, spent more than $5 million on lobbying in 2021 as it worked to block federal voting rights legislation and advance an ambitious plan to spread its far-right agenda calling for aggressive voter suppression measures in battleground states. So why would the morbidly rich and their personal, foundations and the corporations that made them rich, why would they be throwing money into efforts to reduce democracy in the United States? There's actually a fascinating backstory here. It goes back to 1951. In 1951, Russell Kirk, who was a, kind of a well-known conservative gadfly thinker, published a book called The Conservative Mind. In that book, and probably more importantly and more explicitly in many of the writings about and around that book, particularly by people like William F. Buckley, who argued in print in National Review that, whites should continue to control the United States because blacks are inferior. It literally said that. But around that book and that time in the early 50s was this theory among Republicans, among conservatives, that the growing middle class at that point in time was a danger to American democracy. The American middle class in 1951 was growing faster than any middle class had ever grown in the history of the world. By that point, in 1951, about half of us were in the middle class. That had never happened before in any country. And Kirk and others around him, particularly Buckley, predicted that if the middle class continued to grow, we would hit a point where the average working person would have enough wealth that they would have the leisure time to engage in politics, which had traditionally been the sport of the rich. And that once the average American started getting politically active, it would produce chaos. There would be riots in the streets, the country would be on fire, the proletariat would rise up and demand that the rich be taxed to death and all that money be redistributed, and that would be the end of society, the end of democracy, the end of America. Now, when Kirk published that in 1951, there was only a small number of conservatives who took him seriously. But of the billionaires who were funding him, actually, the Hunt brothers, he said, or supporting him, he said, their numbers are small and they are stupid. That was in 54. But then came the 1960s. In 1961, the birth control pill was legalized. By 1964, it was in widespread use, kicking off the women's movement. Women were saying, hey, we can control fertility now. We want equality in the workplace, equal pay, equal rights. We had the civil rights movement was getting very, very active throughout the 1960s. And so by the end of the 60s, in addition to those things, there were a number of high-profile police killings of unarmed black people that then provoked riots. And so you had cities on fire. So you had women burning their bras, or at least that, that was the media narrative. You had black people burning cities. You had the war in Vietnam by 1967. You had students burning draft cards. I mean, this was at that point, the conservatives. And the labor union, the labor movement was in full swing. 1970 was the peak. 5,716 strikes in that 1 year. Over 3 million workers walked out in 1970. And as that happened, these four things happened. These four movements all happened in the 60s. Conservatives looked back at what Russell Kirk had written and said, my God, this guy was a prophet. The country is in flames. The young people are rebelling. The women and minorities no longer know their place, for God's sake. We've got to do something. And what they did was, in 1980, they elected Ronald Reagan. And the Reagan agenda was, very straightforward. Declare war on labor unions so we can dial back the wealth and thus political power of the middle class, the working class. End free college across the nation so students would study in fear rather than be willing to protest. Increase the penalties that Nixon had put on the war on drugs so that the force of law could be used against black people and the anti-war hippies. And, Reagan cut taxes on rich people. He dropped the top tax rate from 74% down to 27% ultimately. He put a tax on Social Security income. He put a tax on unemployment benefits. He created a mechanism to tax tips. He ended the deductibility of credit card, car loan, and student debt interest, all things that were used by the middle class. He declared war on labor unions. He crushed PATCO. He brought a young lawyer named John Roberts into the White House to work out ways to overturn Roe v. Wade. His vice president brought in his son, George W., to build bridges between the GOP and the fanatics in the hard right part of the evangelical Christianity movement. And he and Bush pushed through he revived the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade and wrote NAFTA, which Clinton then signed. And sure enough, it worked. Reagan's doubling down on the war on drugs shattered black communities. Our prison population exploded. It became the largest in the world, both as a percentage of the population and in absolute numbers. His war on labor cut average inflation-adjusted minimum and median wages. His war on students, now we got $1.7 trillion in student debt. And the key to selling all this to Americans was Reagan's assertion that democracy is dangerous. He said this in his first inaugural address on January 20th, 1981. Ronald Reagan got up and said that government is not the solution to your problems. Government itself is the problem. Democracy is the problem.
Isn't it always funny that the ones that fight so hard to get into politics then tell you that politics and the government are the problem? They tell you to your face that they are the problem. But do you see now why so many in the GOP tout Reagan and now Trump is their favorite president? Do you see the correlation between them being unqualified? And I'm not saying people who formerly had careers in Hollywood cannot be great in politics. Sonny Bono, Arnold Schwarzenegger, didn't agree with all his policies, but he wasn't horrible. But Reagan, we are still reeling from the decisions he made. You want to know why Mama and Papa have to pay taxes on Social Security? You want to know why so many things are so expensive? Reagan. Want to know who started paving the road towards things? And see, the war on drugs, the war on crime, those are dog whistles. Isn't it funny that the GOP has so many dog whistles as campaign slogans? But that's not even the worst of who's behind the scenes telling everybody the anti-Semitic dog whistle of "Look at George Soros." Let me introduce you to the Council for National Policy.
The Council for National Policy is the scariest Christian nationalist group you've never heard of. Buckle the fuck up. For over a year now, I've been investigating who is behind all of the anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ+, anti-women, anti-BIPOC bills and laws that are being passed in this country. And I've told you about the Alliance Defending Freedom, the ADF, who is behind a lot of the bills. But if they are a henchman, the Council for National Policy is the fucking mob boss. Let me tell you about them. The New York Times describes the CNP as a little-known club of a few hundred of the most powerful conservatives in the country who meet 3 times a year behind closed doors at undisclosed locations for a confidential conference. They are so secretive that you can only attend with the unanimous approval of executive committee, and members are instructed to not even refer to the organization by name like it's fucking Fight Club. And because reality is stranger than fiction, they were founded in 1981 by the author of the Left Behind series, Tim LaHaye. To tell you more about them, we need to go back in the past. We have to go all the way back to 1845 when the Southern Baptist Convention was started. The Southern Baptists were created because they branched away from Baptists over slavery. Southern Baptists supported slavery. The Southern Baptist Convention remained apart from other Protestant denominations during the war, and in 1962, the Supreme Court ended public school prayer. Now they are mad. It's at this time that the Southern Baptists realized that with the shifting demographic of America, that they might be irrelevant very soon. They could not have it that way. So the Southern Baptist Church plotted to get into politics. And in 1979, Southern Baptist preacher Jerry Falwell, who was for segregation, he was vehemently opposed to racial integration in academy, he decided to convene a meeting with some other pastors as well as Republican operative Paul Weyrich, who co-founded the Heritage Foundation, and Falwell, Weyrich, Pat Robinson, Tim LaHaye, the author of the frickin' Left Behind series, and presidential Ronald Reagan got together. They started a little 501c3 organization called the Council for National Policy, which is now a network of evangelicals, oil barons, gun lobbyists, and Republican operatives working to dismantle the social safety net and civil liberties that we have today. And some of its more prominent members today include the Koch brothers and the DeVos family. Leaders of this group have included Tony Perkins, the head of the LGBT-bashing Family Research Council, who was vice president for a year and is still on its board of governors. Tony Perkins, who once claimed that gay people recruit children and secretly published a mailing list for a candidate he was managing from former Klan leader David Duke. Also on the CNP's board of governors is Michael Perotka. Perotka was for many years on the board of the League of the South, a neo-Confederate hate group that advocates for a newly secluded South ruled by white people. Another board member is Matt Staver, leader of the anti-LGBT Liberty Council, who has worked for the recriminalization of homosexuality and calls the Boy Scouts a playground for child abusers. He likened LGBT activists to terrorists. And there's Alan Sears, the founder of, oh look, Alliance Defending Freedom. The AD-fucking-F seeks a fusion of fundamentalist theology with American civic life. They believe that this country was founded for Christians like them, generally natural-born citizens and white. This group owns media outlets. You might recognize this CNP member, Charlie Kirk, who runs something called Turning Point USA. The Daily Caller is also owned by members of the Council for National Policy, and so is Breitbart. Guess what other organization is a part of the CNP? The fucking National Rifle Association, the NRA. The Seven Mountains Mandates, ADF, Moms of Liberty, ALEC, they are all arms of this fucking monster, the CNP. They backed Ted Cruz on his presidential run because his dad, Rafael Cruz, was one of the founding fucking members. Amy Coney Barrett, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Ted Cruz, they've all been speakers at CNP conferences. You know, those secret conferences that they're not even allowed to say the dang name of or even disclose where they're having it. Yeah. All this time, the Republicans talking about how there's a shadowy government. It was them all the fucking time.
The CNP, the Council for National Policy. Remember that name. Notice it when it pops up in articles or on news stations, because that is the organization that is behind all of the shit that is trying to turn America into a white supremacist, Christian nationalist, fascist shithole. The CNP.
Notice how another road leads back to Reagan? Told you, the biggest thing that they have is projection. Projection, projection, projection. Just like there's no such thing within mainstream news outlets as liberal media. They're all owned by conservative entities. And the conglomerates that are conservative that own them are part of what? What did we just learn, class? Now let's take a look at corruption on a smaller scale. Yes, we must travel back down to my southern neighbor, Tennessee.
I've heard referenced in here, as you all have, the three-fifths compromise. I challenge everybody that can hear my voice. Pull out a piece of paper, write down why that compromise was reached.
Admittedly speaking off the cuff, Lafferty went on, defending what he called a bitter but necessary compromise, erroneously claiming it was a way to end slavery.
The three-fifths compromise was a direct effort to ensure that southern states never got the population necessary to continue the practice of slavery everywhere else in the country. By limiting the number of population in the count, they specifically limited the number of representatives that would be available in the slaveholding states, and they did it for the purpose of ending slavery.
Yet the three-fifths compromise wasn't about ending slavery at all. It was one of a number of pro-slavery compromises baked into the Constitution during negotiations in 1787 about congressional apportionment and taxation. What Representative Lafferty failed to mention is that the compromise meant that a state could count 3/5 of its enslaved population toward its total population, even though enslaved people had no rights and certainly couldn't vote. That gave southern states more representation and effectively more political power.
So we've all been talking about the Tennessee Three: Justin Jones, Gloria Johnson, and Representative Justin Pearson. Now, Justin Jones is probably going to get reinstated. Gloria Pearson, because she's a white lady, didn't get kicked out at all. And Justin Pearson, representing Memphis, he's having a harder time getting reinstated because folks is quiet. Amanda, which folks are quiet? First of all, the mayor of Memphis is quiet. He should have been out there standing up saying, as the mayor of Memphis, Tennessee, I, Jim Strickland, will not rest until Justin Pearson is reinstated in his position in the Tennessee House of Representatives. This expulsion cannot stand. Instead, what are we getting? Speaking of silencing, Nashville has been on the necks of the council members who will be reinstating Justin Pearson by saying that if they do so, they're not going to fund their projects in Memphis, which of course silences the people because you voted Pearson in his position. But lastly, when we talk about silence, we have been saying very loudly that we want representatives who go, nope, if you vote. Representative Pearson did just that. No more time for silence. Use your voice and bring your bodies to Memphis on Wednesday at noon at the National Civil Rights Museum to rally and march for the reinstatement of Representative Justin Pearson to his position in the Tennessee House of Representatives.
If you are for the election of Justin Jones to be the interim successor for the vacant seat of Tennessee House District 52, you will vote aye. If not, you will vote no. Ayes 36. No. Justin Jones has been elected as the interim successor for the vacant seat of Tennessee House District 52, pursuant to the state law and the rules governing the Metropolitan Council.
Uh-oh, we need to call Cameron Sexton again. 615-741-2343. Oh, hey, I'm just calling Speaker Sexton because I just read in popular information that he actually doesn't live in the district he represents, and he's been lying to his constituents about it. So, and I also understand that he's overcharged Tennessee taxpayers upwards of $78,000 since 2020 by pretending to live further away from the Capitol than he actually does. Anyway, I was just wondering if you guys could explain why he's allowed to violate Article 2, Section 5A of the Tennessee State Constitution, but he found it appropriate to oust two democratically elected lawmakers for a rules infraction that violates exactly no part of the state constitution. I would love a call back on this. Thanks so much, you guys. Have a good day. Bye. I just had to.
Mr. Speaker, I believe at the time during those events, the House was in recess.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We were not in recess, in fact, until much later. And if we were in recess, it would have been reflected on the video. I would argue that whoever made that recording was in direct violation of the permanent rules of order adopted by the House of Representatives. And so I think that point needs to be in the record, that we not only have failed to authenticate a video that was shown on this floor, we have failed to identify who recorded it. It obviously wasn't provided by anybody in the House Democratic Caucus because we don't know where it came from. So somebody across the aisle who sponsored this resolution or a part of this resolution broke House rules. So are we going to punish them as well today?
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Speaker, if a member was recording the proceedings of this body while the House was in session, yes, they violated the House rules. Recordings made while the House was in recess would not be while the House was having proceedings. If a member felt that another member was recording during session in violation of the rules, they could have raised a point of order at the time of the violation.
Chairman Clemens. Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So at this time, then, I would like to know the recorder of that video and if they would be willing to speak if they recorded that video during the recess. I think that's only appropriate for the record.
That's a question. I don't know who you're directing that to, but we were doing point of orders. Chairman Clemens.
Okay, well, then the point, if there's going to be a potential argument made that that recording was made by a member during recess, then wasn't also the behavior of my colleagues that was on the recording in recess, and how is that a violation of the rules?
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that's the subject of these resolutions that is up for debate by the body, as to what infractions to the rules occurred and when.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Clerk. Well, that just goes to the matter of why we try to authenticate video before you admit it into evidence. You want to know the facts, who made it, when it was made, at what point it was made, who edited it, whatever happened. Also, the motion was inappropriate, and the motion didn't cover activities that took place off the floor of representatives. So half that video was shown against the rules of this House because it wasn't even encapsulated in, or covered by the motion that was made to watch the video.
We'll check that to make sure. Hang on. Mr. Clark.
Mr. Speaker, the motion was to have video of that day's events played in the chamber at this time.
Chairman Clemens.
I don't believe that was, if that was in fact the same motion, the press conference clips that were shown were not even made that same day. That was the next day. So here we have another violation of the rules, and we're not playing by the same rules in an even manner that's creating a fair process. Also, I'd like to raise a point of order that the ethics rules governing this House say that anyone who knowingly knows of someone who broke the House rules and doesn't report them has also violated a rule. So at this time, I'd like to know if anyone knows who violated that rule. Obviously, multiple people in this room saw this video before it came to the floor today, so you all know that someone knowingly broke the rules in the order of this House. So you have all violated the rules at this point, everyone who knows that that video exists at least. So again, the point of order is, are we going to expel everyone in this House that knows that video was made and by whom?
Yeah, I mean, Chairman Clemens, you would have to prove that that video was taken prior to the recess. There's people who believe that video was taken after the recess. So therefore, that would not be an ethics violation or against the House rules. If you would like to prove that that's otherwise, we can do that another time. But right now, we're currently are where we are. Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. At this time, then, I think we should take a look at the House tape, the formal recording of this body, and see when that took place and as to whether or not that video did evidence a violation of the rules. I think that before we proceed today, I think that's 100% appropriate. Otherwise, also, if it does turn out that that entire thing took place during recess, then how did they break the rules if we were in recess? So we can't have it both ways, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Clemens, I believe the first of the videos showed that they did break rules by going to the well and showing that they were at the well, they were speaking, they pulled out a bullhorn and ruled out an order before there was a recess. That's what the first part of that video was that I saw. Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But we also saw in that video that that recording was made by somebody on the House floor that is also questionably a violation of the House rules and ethics rules. And so anyone who knowingly knew about that or took that recording violated the House ethics rules. Therefore, at this time, I move to refer House Resolutions 63, 64, and 65 to the House Select Committee on Rules.
That's proper motion, proper second. We are voting. All those in favor of moving House Resolutions 63, 64, and 65 to the House Select Committees on Rules, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote no. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 25, 73 nays.
Motion fails.
So y'all know Cameron Sexton is the House Speaker who led the charge in expelling Justin Pearson and Justin Jones. Cameron, well, it turns out Cameron Sexton doesn't even live in the district that he represents, which violates the Tennessee Constitution. This is what it says in the Tennessee Constitution. The fake house that he uses is a small little modest house that his neighbor says he's only there on the weekends. His neighbor snitched on him in that paragraph. The Republicans were trying to be sneaky, but you know I had to get him. So actually, Cameron should be expelled.
Well, we got a racist tweet from Arizona State Senator Anthony Kern. Here it is in response to Justin Jones being expelled from the Tennessee House. Anthony Kern, who's a state senator here, tweeted, maybe you should update your Twitter profile to ex-state rep, which is a mean thing to write. I'm asking for my Anglo friend, which is a racist thing to write. So not only is Anthony Kern racist, but he is also unoriginal and a snowflake. Let me prove it to you. Anthony Kern is currently in the state Senate, but he used to be a state representative, and he lost re-election in 2020. In January of 2021, I tweeted at him saying, hey, Mr. Kern, maybe you should update your bio to say former Arizona state representative, because he didn't. He was still tweeting, and he didn't make the update. I know he got that tweet because immediately afterwards, he blocked me from Twitter. I hurt his feelings, and he's such a snowflake that he's had this tweet locked in his head for 26 months, and he's like, oh, I know what to say. But you know what? Being mean about him being thrown out of office, that's not enough. How do I add racism? And so he did it. I decided that I'm going to start a series where I focus on one of the more radical members of the legislature at a time. And so stay tuned, because Anthony Kern's going to be the guy that I start with.
We cannot ignore the racial dynamics that are undergirding actually this institution within the state capitol. And we really have to make sure that in this conversation we are not only addressing the racial dynamic, but why were expulsion papers filed on any of us? The reason was before an end of gun violence. We said we have to stand up to the National Rifle Association and the Tennessee Firearms Association, that is big donors and supporters of a lot of people in the Republican Party of Tennessee. We're here and we had papers filed and were expelled, not only because we had a peaceful protest, but it was what we were talking about, which was listening to the millions of Tennesseans who actually want to see change. That's what ended up happening, and going against that status quo that says you need to be silent and you need to be controlled by people in power and you don't need to listen to your constituents like Larry Thorne and his mother. That is what the status quo is what led to our expulsion.
I think there's no coincidence that the two youngest black lawmakers, I'm 27, Representative Pearson is 28, were kicked out by an almost entirely white 75-member caucus on strict lines. It was a political lynching. It was an attempt to make a spectacle, an example out of us, to say, how dare you think you are equal? And what they're doing is, which the most egregious part is, it's not about us, but it's about the 78,000 people each of us represent, predominantly black and brown constituents who have no voice on Capitol Hill right now, no one to do their consider to speak for them. It's about the people whose voices have now been suppressed. Their will, as duly elected lawmakers, we've been ousted, and now they have no representation on Capitol.
Our voters knew who we were. They knew that we were loud, we were vocal about the issues, and they voted for us for that very reason.
Before I was expelled, you shut off access to my ID badge. Will that be restored? You shut off access to the parking garage. Will that be restored? My email access has been cut off. Will that be restored? My healthcare benefits have been cut off. Will that be restored? And also, I was removed from all the committees I was a member of. Will that be restored? I hope to have an answer on this House floor, Mr. Speaker, for the sake of transparency.
Some of those questions are HR issues. As far as committees, a committee is not appointed to that individual until they're duly elected. That's why I put Representative Johnson back on committees.
I was told that my legislation was eliminated because I was expelled. Will I be able to file 15 more pieces of legislation since my other bills were removed?
So your previous 15 were moved to Leader Camper, I believe, earlier, which does mean that if you don't want to have them transferred back, you have the capability to file 15 bills through delayed committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I intend to use all 15 of my bills to call for common sense gun legislation before we leave this session. My final question, Mr. Speaker, is that we were informed by HR that it was your decision to limit access to the building. It was your decision to cut off our ID badges and parking access. Is that true? And if so, will that be rectified?
I believe your access should be reinstated as soon as the clerk received the information, just right like Representative Johnson's has been restored.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, because that was cut off before I was even expelled. It was cut off days prior. So just wanted to get that clarity on the record. Is there a process for additional questions that will be the best way to submit concerns to you, Mr. Speaker, moving forward if these issues are not addressed by HR? Consistently told that it's your decision to do these things. And so I just want to make sure that we have your support and cooperation in moving forward to be restored as a full member of this body.
Yes, and we'll work with HR if there's any issues like we normally have done and will continue to do.
Thank you.
So they don't want to answer for the egregious acts that they took against these three well before articles of expulsion were placed before them, which was unconstitutional according to the Tennessee Constitution. The Speaker of the House doesn't even live in the district that he's representing. And one of the rules that they claim the Tennessee Three broke, other people also broke, but they don't want to snitch on each other. And they don't want to discuss it on the House floor. But they had no problem talking about the two black men and the 60-year-old white woman on the House floor. Ray Charles could see what's going on here. But that's not even the biggest shit show of the week. And yes, it is only Tuesday. Now let's get into Jim Jordan versus New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Yeah. I told you that the Trump sycophants, I I don't know what Trump has on all of these people, because he's spoken at CNP conferences. But they never said he was a member. But he does think that he's Fredo. But they're going to burn everything to the ground to try to protect Trump. Co-conspirator much?
So Jim Jordan has to continually do Trump's dirty work, and so he's taken this political stunt to New York City, in which he has stated that he's coming to New York City and he basically demands that Alvin Bragg meet with them on the horrific crime in New York City. Please see the response from DA Alvin Bragg, because this is a thing of beauty. He starts it out by saying, yeah, this is a political stunt, and then he ends it by stating all of the facts that Manhattan has actually decreased. Their violent crime, their murders, their robberies have all decreased. So it's a political stunt, and it's not even a good one, Jim.
Jim Jordan clearly wants to fuck around and find out. Because Alvin Bragg's got something for that ass.
Wow. This Alvin Bragg is something else. The way he rinsed Jim Jordan today? Woo-wee! Don't be fooled. Alvin Bragg shreds Jim Jordan over planned field hearing in Manhattan. This is why I tell people, don't get on Twitter and start talking tough to a prosecutor. It's not gonna end well. So as you know, Jim Jordan has made it clear that he's heading to New York. Look right here. Go ahead and pause it if you need to. So, you know, Alvin Bragg saw this nonsense and he got straight to work. Alvin Bragg responded to Jim Jordan and totally woke him up. Alvin Bragg says, don't be fooled. The House GOP is coming to the safest big city in America for a political stunt. This hearing won't engage in actual efforts to increase public safety, such as supporting national gun legislation and shutting down the iron pipeline. Woohoo! Alvin Bragg is on Jim Jordan's you-know-what. In other words, Jim, get to working on the stuff in Congress you need to be working on, and you let me work on what I'm working on. The Manhattan DA's office welcomes public safety conversations. We have them every day with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners. In fact, we'll start. This is where it gets interesting. Just released, New York PD data shows shooting and homicides are down in New York City for the first quarter of this year, with progress in Manhattan helping to drive the overall citywide decrease. Virtually every major crime category is lower in Manhattan now than it was last year as of 4/2/23. Murders are down 14%, shootings are down 17%, burglaries are down 21%, and robberies are down 8%. In other words, Jim, Alvin's doing his job. Are you doing yours? In DA Bragg's first year in office, New York City had one of the lowest murder rates of major cities in the United States at 5.2%, nearly 3 times lower than Columbus, Ohio, which had 15.4%. If Chairman Jordan truly cared about public safety, he could take a short drive to Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Akron, or Toledo in his home state instead of using taxpayer dollars to travel hundreds of miles out of his way. Is it me, Jim Jordan? Or is Alvin Bragg making it hot in here? With all that heat from Alvin Bragg, there's only one thing left to say to the Trump supporters, and you know what it is. Trump supporters, get those knee pads ready. Because Jack Smith is coming.
See, these stunts from Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan and others go to show that they know that their voter base only started paying attention to politics when Trump decided to run. And they're only paying attention to how the political system within the United States works according to what the GOP tells them. But that's not all the tea with this Bragg v. Jordan debacle. DA Bragg is suing the GOP regarding their interference within the Trump case. The GOP is actively trying to discredit Bragg, and they are threatening legislation barring local DAs from prosecuting presidential candidates. Now, what did we learn from DeSantis earlier this evening? Posturing legislation leads to consequences. If you allow our politicians to believe that they are above the law because they're holding office or running for office, this shit show is going to turn into the biggest dumpster fire ever. Now, if you're ready to live in the world of Mad Max, have at it. I am not. I am not. All of this interference and acting as if Congress has jurisdiction over local district attorneys, no, ma'am. No, sir. Also, Alvin Bragg is the DA. He is not the chief of police. He is not the mayor. He is not the governor. He is not the lieutenant governor. He is not the state representative. Criminals are arrested. Information is forwarded to the DA. The DA must decide. Does this go to a grand jury? What are these charges? How do we move forward? Do we offer a plea agreement? They don't set the laws. So that means DA Bragg is doing such a good job in working with the police, working with the mayor, etc., that people are like, I don't want to get arrested and fuck with him. He's not about to give me a slap on the wrist. Maybe I should chill. And Marjorie Taylor Greene today on Twitter decided to be egregious. No, I'm not going to show the video, but she was claiming that, murders are just happening all over Manhattan. It's so dirty. It's so... Girl, maybe you should talk to your former bestie, Boebert. Not sure what I'm talking about? Oh, y'all know I brought it.
Y'all, I got some breaking Boebert news. Her eldest son, soon to be dad here, got into a car wreck and he hurt his friend. So Tyler is Lauren Boebert's older son, flipped the SUV, causing his friend multiple concussions and a severely lacerated hand. Even though the police found drugs at the scene, Boebert's son was only given a careless driving ticket, which was downgraded to a defective vehicle for headlights, and the entire accident was downplayed. The friend says that the entire family just doesn't give a fuck, and they tried covering up stuff before. But just because he's Lauren Boebert's son doesn't mean that he's a god. So Boebert's kid is out here impregnating underage women, flipping SUVs with drugs in them, hurting his friends, and getting a slap on the wrist. What a piece of shit family. Stay left, stay triggered, and Hobart, get your shit together, Grandma.
Now, also keep in mind, this friend suffered injuries so badly that he had to change careers. He could no longer be a welder. He is now described as a full-time caregiver. And with his inability to hold certain things now, I wonder how long that's going to last. That is sad. And keep in mind, we're now in the month of April. This is when the elder Boebert penis carrier, 14-year-old girlfriend, is due to go into labor with that registry that they have at Target. But I thought she didn't like Target because they were too woke. Now, before we tackle the rest of the political jargon, these Bud Light protests are really becoming unhinged. Like, I know conservatives do not know how to protest. We've seen it with Nike. We're seeing it with Nike again. We've seen it with the NFL. They don't know how to protest, because why are you mad at Nike again when y'all said years ago that you were protesting Nike and you were never going to buy Nike products again? Why do you care who one of the thousands of faces of Nike are if you already protested them? But these alcohol protests, you know what? Please don't be eating or drinking anything, because I don't need y'all choking as you laugh at this chicanery.
Y'all, they're taking this Bud Light protest even further. I have never seen a group of people so triggered in my entire life. Check this shit out. They bought all of this beer, all of that beer, just to fucking run over it. Look at all that wasted liquid. donate that shit to a homeless shelter or something. God damn. What is wrong with these people? I mean, what the fuck is this timeline we're living in? How much money do you think they wasted? Literally poured down the drain. Can't make this shit up. Wow. Meanwhile, their stock looks just fucking fine. These losers think they're doing something. I can't.
Now, before I go on to the next video, just a little bit more caveat. Now, remember, I updated y'all on Kid Rock and how he got busted drinking a Bud Light next to a drag queen. His restaurant still has a variety of Anheuser-Busch, the makers of Bud Light, products available. And they're going with this narrative, which was a falsehood, because, you know, a tweet or a meme on Facebook or Instagram, they take as the gospel, saying that the whole marketing team was fired, the CEO stepped down, the stocks are tanking. How are the stocks tanking when you're spending more than you were before to protest? People that are like, I haven't drank a Bud Light in 25 years. So you went out to the store to buy one to make a video and protest? You weren't buying it to begin with. Just continue to not buy it. Like, I'm not a Bud Light drinker. Fine. I'm not their demographic. Cool. I'm not going to go buy a Bud Light to say, I hate Bud Light. Like, what? But this next one, this is why I laugh. Y'all complain about gas prices, inflation, all of these things. And it's Biden, the Democrats, the liberals, the leftists, the libtards. Y'all find the money from somewhere.
What is TikTok bringing me this evening?
I'm the biggest advocate and supporter of Jack Daniel's whiskey. Have been for 40 years of my life, if not longer.
Oh, good Lord. I think we know where this is going to go.
Here's the deal. You went woke. So this is what I got for you guys. A mirror that has been in every house I've owned.
I can't really comment on the mirror. My drinks cabinet is a barrel.
Every Jack Daniel's glass that I've ever owned.
Solo party cups are trendy, I suppose.
Every wooden sign that's been up in my pubs.
Are you remodeling the pub? I'm going to guess at the amount of Tennessee Fire. Are you in Tennessee?
Two of the world's most expensive Jack Daniels. $250 a bottle and $100 a bottle.
I do believe somebody is blissfully unaware of Coy Hill, Double Eagle, Sinatra, Double Barreled. None of which I can afford to drink, let alone throw away.
Fuck your woke-ass company.
You do realize you've already paid for that, right? Anheuser-Busch, Ford, Nike, Carhartt. Jack Daniels apparently has entered the chat. Let's raise a glass to our latest snowflake. Oh, sorry, no, you've smashed them all.
Did you notice how that really didn't burn? Did he refill those bottles with apple juice? But anywho, child, yes, they're destroying things that they've already had. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. If you want to be closed-minded, be closed-minded. But, honey, obviously you don't know the history of Jack Daniels and where the formula for Jack Daniels came from. It's been a woke company. Like Jack himself mourned the death of the black man that he essentially patented his recipe from. Y'all just don't read. Y'all don't watch anything other than Fox News. Y'all just... Anywho, child, did y'all know that George Santos used to have a public access TV show? It is as ridiculous as you think it is. Take a look.
Hi, everyone. My name's George Santos, and I'm your host for the new show Talking GOP, where we'll be meeting here once a week to talk about current news and what's going on. We're going to dive head in the swimming pool of politics. I beg to differ. It's nothing to sneeze on. There's food, and when I mean there's food, there's a lot of food. To socialize without it being very boring. To see that we've fought socialism throughout, you know, the sentiment of socialists' ideology, to say that that's going to implicate on funding. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, seriously. The House chose to impeach a duly elected president for no crimes just because their feelings were hurt. Somewhat about over 10,000 followers on Facebook, and that's with shadow banning.
Yes.
Congressman Suozzi needs and has to put out fair legislation that can be back trying to claim Jewish heritage or anything. My mother's father was Ukrainian. I'm sorry, my mother's grandfather was Ukrainian. My grandfather grew up Jewish. My grandfather during the Soviet issues. And I'm Catholic. I believe we're all Jewish. Jesus Christ is Jewish. And if you believe in Jesus, and we're all brothers in Christ, waken the beast in the country and bring out people to realization the Democrats are out for us. And is that a AR-15?
That is, it self-identifies as a non-assault rifle, but yes, it is an AR.
That's pretty insulting. I did contract COVID. He's a branding whore. My family Brazil is the common point for both my parents. We have to drive bulletproof cars. We're talking about against AK-47s, AR-15s, or in some cases, automatic machine guns.
Very
commendable.
All
right, show's over. Like, seriously, that's...
It's pretty clear he just wants fame, infamy, any way that he can. But it's mighty funny that he says that, you know, they have to ride in bulletproof cars. Then why aren't you a proponent of gun legislation? Why not? Well, let's take a look at additional racism in politics, because, you know, they seem to go hand in hand like peanut butter and jelly.
Watch this. I'll be back.
Could it just be that African Americans or the colored population do not wash their hands as well as other groups, or wear masks, or do not socially distance themselves? Could that just be the explanation of why it happens?
Saying the quiet part out loud and having absolutely no shame or even awareness of their racism and bigotry.
Okay. Yes. When people say yes, they're finally saying that, well, not finally, but they're saying the quiet part out loud. They're saying the quiet part out loud again. But stop giving them the excuse that they don't know what they're saying. They know exactly what they're saying. They are just re-emboldened to say it outside of the Klan rallies, to say it when they don't have the hood on. They know exactly what they're saying. This is a race of people who had to be taught how to wash their ass that are now questioning if Black people know how to properly wear a mask and properly wash our hands. Our people didn't have to suffer the Black Death. We were not embroiled in the bubonic plague. We were not sharing space with shit, piss, and rats in castles. We didn't have June as the wedding month because that's the only time that white women would thoroughly wash their ass. There is no one in Black history who's walking around with 2 booty holes because they refuse to wash their ass to the point where their barber / surgeon had to relieve something on their booty that is royalty. For the rest of their lives, they walked around with 2 booty holes. We weren't the ones that had to run out and stockpile cleaning supplies when we found out COVID was a thing. They know what they're saying. They are very aware of what they are saying. The hate that they covet, they are very aware of. Stop making excuses for them. If you want the conversation about race to end racism. And one key component of ending racism is stop excusing the racist. They are not feeble-minded, uneducated children. Ay, caramba. Now, Missouri, come close, baby. They're trying to take your libraries. I'm going to help you save them.
Missouri reps just voted to completely defund the state's public libraries.
Okay, check this out, y'all. This is important, so I need you all to try to get this information out to the people of Missouri. So finally, the research I've done is maybe coming in handy. Missouri is one of the states that allows direct initiated state statutes. That means there can be a citizen-initiated ballot measure that amends or, adds to a state statute without first requiring approval by the state legislature. So this is a means of direct democratic participation. You can see here, which, by the way, this is all linked in the Google Doc that I have in my bio, that this is allowed through the state constitution. All that's required to pass a ballot initiative is 5% of the votes cast for governor in the last election. That's just the number that's required. Now, I just did a little Googling to see, get some ideas for how this could be written as a citizen-led initiative. The right to receive information could be considered protected by the First Amendment. That includes public libraries. There's even court precedent that protects public libraries under the First Amendment right to receive information. This recent initiative in San Diego would be a really good example to kind of use for inspiration as well. They're trying to get an act passed that would provide a permanently restricted revenue source for libraries and parks that would be protected from the political whims of elected officials. TikTok, do your thing and get this message out to Missouri. We got this, y'all.
Missouri, you have the information, use it. Use it. Remember, we the people. Stop acting as if you are afraid of the people you elected into office. You're quick to tell a teacher, you're quick to tell a service worker how you pay their bills, how you're responsible for their paycheck. Take that energy to the people who you actually do hold responsibility over their paycheck. Those are the people who work for you, the politicians. Leave Miss Madeline down at the 7-Eleven alone. Leave Gertrude over at Big Lots alone. Leave Miss Madison and Miss Anderson up at the schoolhouse alone. Go gather these politicians and show them you mean business. You want to criticize all these other countries and tell people, if you don't like it here, try it over there. You're about to experience worse than what it is over there right here because you big and bold when you want to talk to 16-year-old Rebecca because you mixed up what store had your favorite perfume. And instead of admitting that you're wrong, you want to cuss her out and try to get her fired. Go get these corrupt politicians out. You get tired of folks that are non-white. Then why you got to bring race into everything? Because your ancestors made this racial hierarchy that you are comfortable in. You are just mad that we are the pea in the bed that you cannot feel. And as always, thank you for watching me here on Conversations with Taz, specifically here on Talk About It Tuesdays. Unfortunately, this week, the resident ginger will not be with me, so I'm going to try to lighten things up for you all tomorrow, but that's up to your fellow residents and how well they behave between right now and tomorrow's show. But I do have some great think pieces that I want to discuss with you all. And as always, if you enjoyed and feel like this show or any of my other shows have been informative to you, please share this broadcast and others, and check out all the links in the description of this video. As always, each one teach one, each one reach one. Y'all have a good night, and let me leave you with a little chuckle.
I haven't forgotten a single thing since the day my mother stopped breastfeeding me. It was a drizzly Tuesday.
Sheldon, what channel is NASA TV?
289, right between the Game Show Network at 288 and the East Coast feed of the Disney Channel on 290.
Sheldon, what are the ingredients in Pringles?
Dried potatoes, vegetable oil, corn flour, wheat starch, maltodextrin, salt, and my favorite ingredient of all, uniformity.
Play a potion card.
Which one?
It doesn't matter. You can't possibly win. Given the cards that have already been played, Penny can only be holding necromancer potions, which are only effective against wraiths and daywalkers, and there are no more of either left to be drawn. The cards remaining in the undrawn stack are 4 fire weapons, a troll, 2 ogres, and the Jewel of Osiris.
Sheldon, that is incredible.
From your vantage point, it certainly must seem so. Photographic is a misnomer. I have an eidetic memory, as I've told you many times. Most recently, last year during lunch on the afternoon of May 7th. You had turkey and complained it was dry.
You and I made a pact that if either of us ever got a hot girlfriend, that person would have his girlfriend hook the other guy up with one of her girlfriends. I don't remember that.
June 30th, 2004. Opening day of Spider-Man 2 at the AMC Pasadena. They only had red ICs, no blue.
How come I wasn't part of this deal?
You had left the refreshment stand in order to indulge in your customary preemptive pre-show urination.
I read that someone invented a way to convert your footsteps into electromagnetic energy.
We had that idea years ago. How come we never did anything with it?
I know the real reason you never made progress with that idea. You thought of it September 22nd, 2007. 2 days later, Penny moved in, and so much blood rushed to your genitals, your brain became a ghost town.